There is a lot of pressure on men to be strong and big and good at fighting. And there's some fighting channels on YouTube that teach self defense. And I forget his name, but he's this bald guy. And um, he tests out different fighting techniques and weapons. And he was saying, like, a lot of fighting, we think of it as like, you're trying to fuck the person up or whatever, but throughout history, like, that's not really how we fought. It's been mainly like jujitsu or taking down people and asserting dominance. And he talks about like how we as men and in a patriarchal structured society, we attach a man's worth to his ability to dominate physically. So this makes me think a lot about like animals, like let's say bears for instance. A lot of when they fight is mainly like posturing. They're trying to scare one another, and then they fight just enough to make the other back down because they see that the risk of trying to actually kill each other is pretty high because it's dangerous for both bears. Now, there's other cases where they will be trying to kill each other, and but most of the times when people confront one another or face off, right? It's really to like make the other person back down, right? So a lot of this bleeds into society, like size and people acting aggressively, the things they say to one another. I'm gonna, so I am a small in structure. I am pretty short. I weigh about 57 kilograms, 125 pounds. I'm about 5'5" in height, 5 feet 5 inches, about 166 centimeters in height. So I felt throughout my life, um, I've noticed that a lot of men, they are hyper aggressive and they treat people who are small badly because they automatically assume that they can physically dominate them. And they treat also like they treat large people badly too. I've seen this in person. Like, um, I've had several friends who are very big men, and it's like, let's say we go out, right? So this has happened to me. This guy tried to hug me at a bar, and I said, "Don't touch me." I didn't know him. He was just some random drunk guy, and he got in my face, and it was so weird. He was like, "I have friends in the army that will fuck you up," and I was like, "Look, I'm I don't want anything to do with you. I don't care. Just don't touch me." And then I had a very large friend where it's like average guys of average height would go up to him and act aggressive, and they it's so funny because it's like on one end they feel like I'm not a threat because of my height, so they feel like they can push you around, and then on the other hand they feel threatened by someone who is very large, so they feel like they have to prove themselves, so by challenging that large person. So this is like the what I've come to realize is men who have toxic masculine traits or are insecure constantly feel the need to prove themselves physically because they either don't have anything else to go on, or they're just small-minded individuals. Because look, I'm not trying to degrade the importance of physical ability or self-defense ability. I do believe in learning self-defense. I do believe in having self-defense capabilities, whatever that means. And you think about it, right? Like there are people who are physically handicapped who still need to defend themselves, and that's why we have things like weapons and guns. And unfortunately, we live in an era where the human race is cannibalizing itself, and we need to defend ourselves from one another. So I do advocate a strong defense on every level, national, individual, whatever. I wish we didn't need weapons in society or anything, but unfortunately, that's where we are, right? So, any individual who is capable of learning how to defend themselves, I encourage that. But at the same time, like, we shouldn't have to, as a society, attach our worth as people or as men and the role of being a man and big, strong man and protecting our women and blah, blah, blah. Like, I understand that there is some people who see the need for that, but it shouldn't be that. And to view things as being inherently like that is incorrect. So when I was in high school, um, I think I was a sophomore or a junior in high school, but I joined the wrestling team, and it was like my first time doing any martial arts type thing in a long time. And there was this guy who was in a weight class below me, and we were coming back on the school bus from a wrestling like tournament, wrestling meet. And I never had anything against this guy, but we were talking about something, and he said like, "Oh yeah, do you want to box?" And I had never boxed or anything like that, and I thought, he meant like we're playing around and gonna like, maybe trade some punches or something like that. So I was like, okay. We got off the bus when we arrived, and the other people on the team were all laughing because they wanted to see like a show. So we went behind some bushes, and they all got behind me, and this guy like puts his hands up, and I was feeling like good. I was like in a good mood, and I put my hands up, and then he shoved me and started calling me a bitch, and I was confused. I was like, what? And he was like, fuck you, little bitch, I'll fuck you up. And then he punched me in the face, like, and the thing is like he was very physically weak, so the punch like glanced off my cheek, and it didn't hurt, but it made me really mad. And I like in that split second I realized like this wasn't playing, and you know like, oh, I'm getting a little angry right now talking about it still. This happened like I want to say 13, 14 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago. um, but yeah, so I in that moment I was mad, and I like, I put my hand back, and I was like leapt up, and then everyone else, like my friends from the wrestling team, they grabbed me. They like held me back, and they wouldn't let me go. And then this guy like walked away, and I was so mad, and I even ran out and I looked for him, and I was like, where is he? And he went somewhere else. And later I don't know who told the wrestling coach, but he made me shake the guy's hand and in front of everyone, and everyone was laughing, and I remember feeling so humiliated because it was like I felt like this guy who was smaller than me, weaker than me, and other things I didn't like about him. I don't want to disparage someone's appearance and stuff, but I saw myself as better than him, but I felt humiliated because, um, for instance, after that happened on Facebook, I saw people posting like, poor Timmy, he got hit, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I was so angry about it. I was like, this guy isn't even shit. And I could feel that I could like beat him physically. And I felt so like, and this is just one example. There's other times in my life where, bitch made a bitch, whatever, like, um, being physically intimidated by someone, right? And when I was, I think, 16 or 17, I started doing mixed martial arts. And I don't think I'm like a good fighter or anything like that because I've sparred and I've met many people who are actually good fighters, and I think I'm very like lower intermediate, sometimes intermediate. um, when I was training every day for multiple hours a day, I was starting to get pretty decent, but it's something you have to keep up with unless you're naturally gifted, and I'm not naturally gifted at it. But through several years of learning mixed martial arts, like I am somewhat capable. Like I know the basics of mixed martial arts, right? And learning that and having real life experiences like witnessing bar fights, and one time I was dragged into one because one of my friends, who I don't really hang out with anymore, haven't seen them in years, but they were causing trouble and I had to defend them. But a lot of this stuff like is very chaotic, and it's like no matter how good you are of a fighter, let's say like BJ Penn, who was a champion of um, UFC, Ultimate Fighting Championship. He was a champion fighter, and he got knocked out by some random guy in a street fight. And I think it was Anderson Silva also that happened to him. And there was another MMA fighter who was really good, who was shot and killed. Now, I'm not saying that learning MMA is useless, because I encourage anyone, especially, people like me who are small, or let's say women, I encourage them to learn self-defense techniques. But to automatically assume that because you're a good fighter, you're always going to win in a street, like anything can happen in a street fight. Like, and that's the thing. The best defense technique is not being in that fight. And I know, like, I made a short, I think yesterday, where I said the only way to defend against violence is with violence. Unfortunately, that is a reality that you have to adopt, let's say, warring tactics when facing violence, right? But sometimes retreating is the correct tactic in that. I was talking about a specific instance where the TikTok user Watchful Coyote confronted someone spreading anti-Semitic ideology. Now, he intimidated that person by yelling at them, and that's a kind of violence, right? But when I say like combating violence with violence, I don't automatically mean like, if someone pushes you, you pull out a knife and start stabbing them or something like that. Like that's like there is strategy involved here, right? So, back to my original point. Men, like this idea that physical capability and the ability to physically dominate is attached to our self-worth. It's an idea built on toxic masculinity and poisonous patriarchal hierarchy. Like it is a false notion, and it's a brutal and savage notion. Maybe for like barbarians, and when we were more like fucking ooga booga cavemen, like it would make more sense. But we should be getting away from those things. Like violence, like controlled violence in a sport environment, like that's different, right? But violence in everyday society, there's no place for it. It's something we need to grow out of as a civilization. So any man or woman or whoever else is watching this who thinks that fighting ability is like so important, like you're gonna get hurt, you're gonna get old, you're gonna lose your physical capability at some point. It's like looks, everything you attach your sense of self-worth to, it's fleeting. Like look beyond that, transcend those myopic concepts, and learn to be a better person based on things that have actual value, like helping others. So, thanks for listening.